I have to start this video off by talking about how much I love Rivals 1. Rivals 1 is my favorite game of all time, or at least one of them. I've put in over 1,000 hours, and while admittedly a lot of it is workshop, I do love the base game, and I don't think the game would be nearly as good without the foundation it sets. I've always preferred traditional fighters to platform fighters, and I find the platform fighter space lacks innovation. The only real recurring series that there is in that space is Smash, and people don't really experiment with the format. But Rivals was different. The game is so much faster and snappier than every other platform fighter. It feels a lot like anime fighters like BlazBlue and Guilty Gear in the way that it keeps the action flowing and minimizes downtime. And unlike those titles, even in Hitstun it provides plenty of mechanics to give you control. This creates a really dynamic game that even without traditional defense makes every mistake feel like your fault and gives unmatched control over your characters. It's not a perfect game, and I think more could be done with the design spaces of some of the characters, but it's still pretty dang good. When Rivals 2 was announced, I was cautiously optimistic. A lot of the changes went against a lot of the mechanical things I liked about the first game, but it was hard to tell in a vacuum. However, the intent of the game seemed to be to put a better focus on the characters and expand their kits in new and interesting ways, so I was really still curious to see what would happen. April 26th through the 28th was the open beta period for the game, and as a backer for the game, I got my chance to try it out, and I was looking forward to seeing how the changes would affect the game. And my thoughts after playing it were honestly quite negative. I don't even think the game itself is necessarily bad, and a lot of people seem to be enjoying it, but I don't think this game feels like Rivals. I don't tend to mind when games make major changes to the formula. Street Fighter and Guilty Gear do pretty much every installment, and those are fine. But Rivals somehow manages to strip away what made the first game accessible and fun. Furthermore, I truly think it fails to expand on the formula in meaningful or interesting ways, and the changes that it does make serve to homogenize the game rather than let it stand on its own. I'm aware this is controversial, and if you like the game, I'm genuinely happy for you. But I just have so many grievances about the game that I need to air in the hopes that some of them can get fixed. Before I get into the issues, I want to go over a couple of things that I do really like about this game. I've heard mixed things about the online, and that's mainly because of the server-based nature of them. And yeah, if you're not close to a server, your mileage may vary, but for me, the netcode is the best it's ever been in any platform fighter. Everything feels great with absolutely no lag whatsoever. And visually, I think the game looks nice. All the stages look better than ever, and the characters look great and move really well. I'm not too big on Zetterburn's redesign, but I understand that it might not have transferred well to 3D. And speaking of the stages, all of them are great. There's some fun layouts like Treetop having a swinging platform, and the last round variations are cool too. I didn't think I was going to like the music as much, because it felt weird that it was still chiptune-esque when the game was moving away from that, but I was pleasantly surprised. The tracks all blend the FM synths with the more natural instruments for an absolutely fantastic sound. I'm adding this in post quickly because I think I need to stress this too. A lot of this was written while I was still processing the game, and while I stand by what I'm going to say, I do want to be clear that the game has grown on me a bit, and you can tell that the devs still have the foundation for a very solid game, even if I think its context makes it much rougher than it seems. The game still has a few unique mechanics like hit falling, and the gameplay is still fast and frantic. I started to enjoy my time with it a lot more, and while I'd still take Rivals 1 over it any day for reasons we'll get into, I would still play Rivals 2 over any official Smash game any day of the week. I think this is important as a lot of my takes from this point on might be a little bit more negative, and I want to remind you that this game is still good fun, even to me. I just think that it's going to be more critical looking at it as a sequel to a game I absolutely love and want to see more of. Aesthetically, the game is great, which is all the more reason I want to like it, but I just can't. I think the easiest thing to start with is the elephant in the room. The Rivals series invented one of the greatest defensive mechanics of all time, and while it's seemingly minute and invisible as a spectator, it defines the feel of Rivals and is a mechanic that I think makes the game feel great at all levels. In the Smash franchise, you can alter the trajectory an attack sends you in by holding a direction while in hitstun, known as DI or directional influence. This system is great, and allows you a chance to escape a combo or survive a hit with good thinking. But there's still some drawbacks with this system. For one, it only affects the initial hit, so if you're a little too slow to react, you're out of luck. It also means the way that you travel is linear, so if the opponent can react in time, they may still have true follow-ups. Rivals adds even more depth to the system with the introduction of drift. While in hitstun you can alter your trajectory slightly over time, meaning you maintain some control over your character at all times. This lets you feel in control of your character at all times, and making getting hit with a long combo feel like your fault. I know this probably seems like a technical thing, but it's really not. Even at the lowest levels of play, a player's natural fight or flight response will cause them to hold in or out, and even if they don't understand what's going on, they'll feel more in control of their character. This is one of the best mechanics to ever grace platform fighters and makes Rivals flow much better than the competition. Rivals 2 does not have this feature. This may seem like a small nitpick, but for reasons we'll get into later, this change magnifies all the issues with this game 100-fold. It takes agency away from the player and makes you feel much less in control of your character. The combos feel very one-note and tend to be quite repetitive, as juggling with the same move over and over is not only viable but often optimal. The game wouldn't be perfect, but it would feel a lot better if Drift DI returned, and I also think it's one of the few changes that could actually happen. I'll be referring back to it a lot because of this. In terms of movement, the game does feel alright. It's very similar to how it was in the first game, although I don't really like that wave dashes were nerfed across the board and feel less consistent. What I really don't like is the changes to wall jumps. In Rivals 1, characters can use a wall jump once per airtime to get rid of their pratfall. This can be used either to get a second up special or to keep you actionable for a waveland or to hop on the stage with an attack. Due to the addition of ledges, this mechanic got reworked. Now you can only wall jump during pratfall if you were not sent into a pratfall by an up special. Unless you're Crag, because the devs didn't change anything about him for some reason. I get why this change was made, but this kinda goes against the spirit of recoveries in Rivals 1. It's very rare in Rivals 1 at any level of play to see a player fail to recover. Instead, the offstage is sort of a danger zone where any strong hit will kill, and I think this is really exciting for players and spectators. In Rivals 2, you can still get plenty of kills with spikes and whatnot, but it's way more common to see recoveries get gimped, which is so much less satisfying. It's also just really bizarre and inconsistent that some moves can just be wall jump cancelled but not others. I suppose there's a rhythm to it, but it inherently makes picking up a new character less intuitive. Rivals 2 also homogenizes a lot of mechanics from other platform fighters, namely Smash Bros., ledges, shields, and knockdowns all influence the game in ways that I don't really think it needed. To be honest, I think ledges are the tamest addition, and the one I don't think hurts anything. A big complaint about Rivals 1 was how brutal the offstage could be, with a good opponent being able to keep someone offstage for a very long time if they burned their resources early. I'm only bringing it up because, again, it's the reason that wall jump recoveries were nerfed. I think the combination of the two makes going deep offstage much riskier, but it hasn't made being offstage too safe. The ledge options aren't all that different to trying to punish Sylvanas' recovery either, so if you're used to that, it's not too bad. I have been a shield hater since day one. I just think they're a bad defensive mechanic that isn't satisfying for either side of the interaction, and one of the biggest places that platform fighters need innovation. And in Rivals 2, they still don't feel great. I'm not going to speak on them too much because I have my own biases, but it definitely feels very one-dimensional. There's nothing like high-low blocking or side switching or any sort of interaction to keep the player engaged, and it's just a case of don't get grabbed and punish moves if they're unsafe on shield. It also drastically slows the game down. In Rivals 1, characters are quite scary with how they can punish a mistake with lightning-fast kill moves, but with shields, the game can slow to a crawl if both players want to be defensive. It also makes the game way less air-focused, as not having access to shield is quite risky. I just don't enjoy it, and I think it could be reworked to be a riskier, faster option, but I'm not sure exactly what I'd change other than making the shields recharge slower. I do like that you can use the C-stick to jump out of shield though. It's a really nice quality of life mechanic. Knockdowns, on the other hand, feel really bad right now. It follows the trend of having a moment where you lose control of your character, which Rivals 1 tried so hard to avoid. You can tech a lot of them, which does help, but the game seems way more focused on tech chasing on the ground than Rivals 1 did because of it. Tech rolls are slower and much more punishable, meaning it's often easy enough for the opponent to continue chasing you down while you're still stuck to the ground. This is also worsened by the lack of drift DI, as in Rivals 1 you could often drift far enough away from the opponent that tech chases weren't as common, but here, you'll definitely be close enough that you have to play the guessing game or be stuck on the ground for a bit. This is the one change that I understand is inevitable, and something I'm gonna have to get used to, but it's another thing that I think misses the point of why Rivals 1 worked. But I understand, this game isn't Rivals 1. It doesn't have to be Rivals 1, and by all means, it shouldn't be Rivals 1. Rivals 2 went in a completely different direction than the first game, and we do have an idea of what they were going for. The focus was to make something closer to Project M, but hone in more on the design and expressiveness of the characters. The game introduces a lot of new mechanics to play around with them, and with a new game, the potential to make some new and interesting changes to these characters is there. So I did come into this game hoping to see what they would do to make the game new and exciting. So why am I comparing it so much to Rivals 1? Despite how drastically the game's system mechanics have changed, the characters returning from Rivals 1 are almost the exact same. In terms of moveset changes, Krag's neutral special can cargo throw now, Claren's neutral B is a charge attack that covers a large distance, Rano's forward smash is a projectile when it's charged, and Maple's tether now has a new input the game obnoxiously puts a HUD element on the screen for. I may be missing one or two, but the point is that most of these characters have had almost nothing done to their base kits. Obviously moves have been tweaked and adjusted, but there's very few actually drastic changes to the game. I was really curious to see what they do to Raster, a character who I personally think is one of the weaker designs in the first game. He's an awkward combination of Jigglypuff and Meta Knight with a Mach Tornado-esque move you never see at high level, and one of the only gimmicks in the game that doesn't interact with the opponent in any way. And I'm happy to report they changed absolutely none of that in Rivals 2. I understand that people like Raster in 1, but people also like all of the other things in 1, and if the focus was supposed to be put on the characters and their design, I don't understand why they didn't go through and give them a second pass. And a lot of these characters had tools that were designed around Drift DI, like being able to drift into Rano's bubble or ladder combos you're intended to drift out of that you just can't do in this game. It genuinely feels awful to play these characters in an engine clearly not designed for them. I don't mind Krag though, because again, he just kinda got to ignore some of the mechanical changes. But the new universal mechanics do give characters new moves, so there's that. Every character has throws, which all seem fine. I don't mind them. There's some neat ones that like Raster chucking you off the ledge, but they're fairly standard for the most part. The main new appeals of the game and the new mechanics that are the selling point are the new specials. The Ledge Special, the Get Up Special, and the Pummel Special. The Ledge Special and the Get Up Special are context-specific attacks that interact with the character's gimmick somehow. For example, Zetta gets up with a slow fire attack and sets the edge of the stage on fire when he uses it on ledge. There's a few characters this works great for, like Rano setting a bubble or Maple putting a plant she can tether to on the ledge, but the other ones range from just glorified slow get-ups like Raster that add basically nothing to the kit, to actively bad like Krag pulling a rock in disadvantage. You can tell these characters were not made with these in mind, and a lot of them just don't do anything interesting with them. That said, that can be hard to do, as while you can taunt in the air to use a get-up attack when you land, they're still context-specific and not something you can do all the time. And that leaves the Pummel Special, which honestly is the most interesting new mechanic on paper. During a grab, you can press special to perform an attack that gives your character a significant advantage. This could be applying a buff to yourself, applying a debuff to the opponent, or even repositioning yourself to gain the advantage. All of these are actually really cool. Even characters like Raster, who don't have the most intricate gimmicks, do some wild stuff like launching the character into the air. The only one who I don't think is all that impressive is Zetta, whose pummel lights the opponent on fire, which is cool until you realize some of his throws already light people on fire, so it's only really good for like down throw tech chase setups. Still though, it's a really cool idea to make the grabs more expressive. But there's something I genuinely don't understand about this mechanic that, unless I misunderstand, makes it kinda useless. The grabs have a mechanic like Killer Instinct's breaker system, where if you can guess whether the opponent will use a normal or special pummel, you can cancel their grab and reset to neutral. The relationship between the normal and special pummel is so skewed, there's no reason to not guess the special pummel, as taking a few extra percent is almost always preferable to giving your opponent a win condition. Normal pummel does cleanse status effects, but the thing about that is the only status you would want to cleanse that way, Maple's Poppy, only applies on special pummel anyway. The way I had assumed this mechanic would work is that you could do the pummel first, then the special to mix up the opponent and get the special, but you can't do both in one grab. Of course right now people will miss hitting special as the game is still new, but as the game evolves, this is going to be disastrous. It's especially bad for Fleet, whose only reliable option to refill her gimmick is the pummel special. I really think they should change this to let you do one normal and one special pummel per grab, but only let the defender guess once. It adds a lot more variety where the opponent can use the normal pummel to fake out the opponent, but the defender can also wait to see the first one to deny the second one. Speaking of Fleet, we should talk about the new characters. Fleet and Loxodon are the new additions, and logically they take more advantage of the new mechanics. Loxodon is a heavy brawler like DDD who can deal out serious damage with his attacks. His main gimmick is placing magma on the stage that he can expend for a burst attack, similar to Forsburn. As a get-up attack, he can expend some of the magma he collects for a powerful reversal, and his grab lets him collect more with a special pummel. I think Loxo is solid, he feels good in the engine, and he's the character that's grown on me the most. I'm glad you can hit the magma ball around to create some really funny projectile setups. I don't think he does anything exceptional that is me sold on the game, but he's fun and that's the most important thing. As for Fleet, I just don't get her quite yet, which is a shame. I think a lot of her normals feel incredibly good, and I love her float, which feels very intuitive and easy to use. Her gimmick is the stamina meter, which she can spend to enchant her arrows. While enchanted, her arrows will attach a time bomb to the opponent that will explode after some time. The opponent can hit Fleet to give the effect back to her, so it has some interesting counterplay. The issue comes in with trying to refill that stamina. She can do it through 3 ways. One is landing her pummel special, which will drop items on the ground that she can pick up. This is unreliable, but it works. The second is her get up special, which spawns a stamina item if it makes contact with the opponent. Third, if she tries to use stamina without having any, she'll do a several second long animation where she eats an apple, giving her a stamina back. This makes her resource economy very limited, and I don't know how I feel about that. Her wind arrows also feel really unintuitive in general, as there's no rhyme or reason to what attacks apply the wind stacks. It seems like it's just attacks with the bow like down special, forward strong, and back throw, but moves like forward throw, down throw, and down strong all use the bow but just don't apply this effect. She also really struggles to kill, as her strongs aren't all that powerful. They do have some incredible range though, but you need a setup to get a reward. She just doesn't have any sort of panic options. The new characters are cool, but there's only 2 of them. We already know that there aren't any more new characters in the base roster, and while the last 2, whose side tangent are technically unrevealed but are literally in the game's folder in plain text, could shake things up, they're likely to be designed the exact same like the other characters from Rivals 1 are. I understand why people like Rivals 2. Hell, I don't hate Rivals 2 now that I've taken some time to calm down from my initial impressions. I see a lot of people who are really liking the game, especially people who didn't play a lot of the first one. As a platform fighter, it's very solid, but as a sequel to the game that came before it, it's just quite lacking to me. It fails to understand the lightning in the bottle of the first game and actively rejects the premise of the first game. However, it's also too afraid to go in a radically different direction, and what's left is a hollow imitation of the first game trying to appeal to an entirely different audience, and that's really depressing. Rivals built a strong grassroots scene through its ability to be different, to be something new to a genre that tended to be stagnant for the time, and to this day, it's the second most popular platform fighter on Steam, far outclassing games that came before it that either tried hard to cling on to the Smash mechanics, or didn't understand the genre the way Rivals did. I want this game to succeed and continue to push platform fighters as a genre, but I want it to do so in a way that can push the narrative away from just being a Smash clone, and can stand on its own. And this seems like a step in the wrong direction.